Are you sleepy? Are you feeling better? Are you feeling less anxious? Trying it. ASMR. You getting anything out of that? All the TikTokers are doing that. Is that making your life easier in any way? I don't know. I don't get it. I get it. I understand what it is. I understand it. I just don't get it. But I know it works for some people. So I just, I thought I'd give it a shot. Um, I did a video the other day on Reels and TikTok. And so if you're not following me on Instagram and TikTok, you better, you hoser. It's on my website, which at the moment is under construction. If you're watching this, it's probably back up. At this very moment, it's under construction, but it's there. You can also find it in my show notes if you're watching on YouTube or listening on iTunes or Spotify. It's there. Find them. Be there. Follow. Thank you. So I did a video the other day where I was doing prep, and actually I just showed that it was like a montage of me doing all sorts of prep, and I had like some music, and I had a little bit of text, some tips on this or something, and people found it soothing. They was like, oh my God, I could watch that all day. Or I remember when so-and-so would do that. Or, oh my God, it was so peaceful watching you chop with your hands and your knife. And I thought it was very interesting because to me, that's just what I do or used to do, I still do for home. But I guess it's like someone doing drywall, right? Like I could, speaking of TikTok, there's videos of people just doing stuff like that all the time, cleaning pools with millions of followers. And I'm one of those people who follows watching a guy clean a pool. And he's probably thinking to himself, these goofs that are following me, this is interesting. It's what I do all day. Anyway, that's my attempt at, trying to connect with my hands to y'all who are listening or watching. Welcome to Seared. Speaking of hands, I wanted to, how we do things here. We start with a story. And this one has to do with hands. And so it's actually like a 2-for-1 because it's they're related. The two stories are related, very much related, but they almost seem like two stories, but they're connected. Anyway, I'll just shut up and do it. So there was one place I went to apply. I was getting into the rhythm of things. And I went to one place. My mentor, when I was apprenticing, my chef mentor, his mentor, the guy he called chef, he had a restaurant. Well-known, middle of the city, near the financial district, said, go, with my blessing, go. And I said, okay. And I interviewed with this guy. And it was funny because this guy was leaving. So he was just like, yeah, whatever, come on board. And I started on cold. You always start on cold apps. They see how you're like, and they move you along. And I was doing well. And one day, they had a replacement for me. I was asked to work at another restaurant. This was a hospitality group, and they owned several different restaurants. And they wanted me to go to like the nice one, the fancy one, the one at the top of this building, 54 floors. And they're like, we're ready for you. And I'm like, okay. I just need to train my replacement. That's all I needed to do. And so they hire a replacement, and he's there to shadow. So for those who are unfamiliar, someone comes in and they just follow you for a couple of shifts, and you show them the whole thing. So they train with you, they work with you, you help them prep, you get them on the line doing a few dishes, and then finally you pull back, you let them do more, and then eventually like finito, see you later. And so this guy Dave shows up, keener. He's been around a bit, but he's ready to jump in. And he's shadowing me. I'm showing him all this. Now, and it was great. It was fine. He was fine. And at the end of the shift, this was the night shift. We were in the dinner shift. One of the things we had to do was to clean. So we didn't have, some places I worked, there's night cleaners. It's a nice luxury, but most places the cooks clean. And so you do like drop the deep fryer, clean the fryer, scrub the hoods, everything. We were doing everything. And one of the things we had to do was the floors. So as I said, you would drop the deep fryer, put everything, the hot oil into like a big metal Hobart bowl, swing it to the back, cover it. You'll pull out stuff. Like I said, you'll stand on top of the stoves and scrub the just all the stainless around, just everything, back walls, backsplash. And the last thing you did was the floor. So one person would sweep, one person would mop, another person would water, one person would scrub, one person squeegee, then a final sweep. It takes like 5 or 6 people. So we were doing that. Now Dave, a dutiful Dave, he had a book that he was writing all his things at, which is great. It's a great sign when a cook comes in with a notebook. That's a good sign. They want to make sure they've got everything, because you can't remember everything. So we were in the back waiting for the last sweep and mop. So the floor was kind of wet. It was wet. And we were beside the recently dropped deep fryer oil, which normally has like a baking sheet or cover. I believe this time it didn't. I don't know why. You know where this is going, right? Or Dave. So for some reason, he's beside that pot of deep fryer. So the oil is still hot. He steps, slips, hand right in, like right in, up to, almost his shoulder. Now, he had a few things working in his favor. One, he had his chef jacket going to his wrist. So his wrist was up to there, was pretty protected. His book, he was clenched in his hand. So that saved the palm of his hand. But that left the top of his hand exposed. Dave was not happy. Dave was in a lot of pain. Dave was in excruciating amount of pain. And so immediately we all jumped in to help. So I've heard you do not put ice water. Like the first thing we want to do is put someone's hand or whatever into ice water. You don't do that because you get frostbite. It may sound silly, but warm water is what you're supposed to put. So I get some tepid to cool water, no ice. He's screaming for ice. I'm like, you're not getting ice. And as soon as we put his hand in this bin, you see the whole top of his hand, the skin just separates like white. And it was like, oh, Dave, someone called 911. And I remember the ambulance, paramedics came and they needed someone to go with him. So I ended up going with him. I don't know how. I don't know if I volunteered or was voluntold. I don't know. So I go to the hospital, which wasn't that far away. It was downtown. And he is screaming for morphine. Screaming at the top of his lungs for morphine. And I'm like, I'd give you some. Can I get you a beer or something? I can't do anything. And so I don't remember how long I was there, but eventually he calmed down and they wrapped and I went back. Probably walked or took a taxi or something and cleaned up and went home. And so of course it was going to be some time before Dave could come back. So fast forward, eventually Dave does return. And in the meantime, I wasn't happy myself. I was kind of griping and groaning about all of this. But time marched on and Dave came back and he took my place and I went to the new restaurant. Cool. I go to the new restaurant. I rock it there. They say, man, you know your stuff. Actually, we're going to get you off this station. Seems like this is not even a challenge for you. We're going to move you to running like the whole garde-manger and there's all sorts of stuff there. But we need to get your replacement. I'm like, sure. They hire a replacement. His name is Dave. So I'm like, okay. Like, I hope this doesn't end up just like the other Dave. And so I'm showing him how to, we're doing like that station we did foie gras. Now, if you don't know foie gras, that is liver, right? Goose liver. And it's almost all fat. And so you'd sear it on a little pan and put the pan up over the salamander, the sally. And then when you need it again, you pull it down and you sear off another thing to order. So I'm showing him how to do this. Now, what I don't know is Dave had done an order, didn't drain the fat from the pan, which is like cast iron. So it holds heat. Dave, too, gets an order for foie gras, pulls the thing. Guess what? Fat covers the same hand, the same part of the hand that Dave 1 hurt himself with. Guess what? Another hospital visit, another time off. So Dave 2 has done exactly like Dave 1. Yay for Paul. I was thinking, like, I'm cursed. Do not bring me anyone near Dave, named Dave, to me ever again. They are going to hurt themselves with, with fiery hot grease. So again, we have to wait. He comes back, and then I finally move to the station I was supposed to go. So, other than being Dave and working with Paul, which is a thing, what this whole, as I was kind of mulling about this story in my head, is like, where does that lead us? And what it does bring me is to the idea of patience and everything in its time. So let's hit the grill with this one, or maybe we'll hit the knife with this. I should have brought some. All right, Does that sound like the fire? I don't know. Probably doesn't. Patience. Okay, so patience is, of course, the thing we want more of, yet we're not ready to wait for it, ironically enough. What I want to share around this is what came up for me in all of this. See, I really wanted to move on, in those situations when I was waiting for the Daves to heal. I was impatient. I wanted them to be there now. I started to get into victim mindset. I started to think, why me? I can't believe this is happening. And especially the second time, I'm cursed. I'm cursed. This is awful. And everything was out of my control, right? And at the time, it took me some time to realize that I could either stay mad about it, to stew in it, to resent, or I could just accept it and wait it out and do my best. And that's just one of the things I had to do. It was a way. It forced me to get to that point because I wanted to move ahead. And the universe is like, no, we're not doing that yet. And what's interesting is that at that first place, the chef there, I remember him asking him, like, can I move to the next station? Can I move to the next station? And he looked at me, goes, well, no, I don't have a spot right now. Secondly, I need you to show me that you want that position by stepping into it, even though you're not really running it yet, but I want to see initiative. And lastly, and I still remember this to this day, is he said, sometimes you just have to do something a million times, right? And he was right in terms of culinary skills wise and also just patience wise. I had to learn to just be with what it is. Not everything is going to be magical and passionate. And, we talk about do things that light you up and the world revolves around it, like in terms of passion. But there are still aspects of that thing that you're not going to want to do. Right? You can have the most beautiful mansion, all that, but you still take out the garbage. You still have to do those things that need tending to. And so even with the cooking and my career, I had to stay put and begrudgingly at times do things over and over. But the gift in that was that I got really good at the skill set part. Like I could do it in my sleep. Like to this day, I can make gnocchi and mashed potato and spätzle and all those carbs. I can do them in my sleep with my eyes closed because I had to do them over and over again. The other part was really stepping into the idea of patience and acceptance. I learned that, I learned that, to not be so arrogant as to think that the universe sacrificed the Daves at the altar of the entremetier section to teach me a simple but powerful lesson. I mean, they just got into accidents. I'm sure there were gifts for them as well. But I learned that one of the domino effects, I learned that not everything was about me. Go figure. you know, I mean, I wasn't owed anything. I mean, shit happened and we had to roll with the punches. And even, well, maybe not the Daves. They had only one hand, they could only roll with one punch. Uh, but it was part of the accepting and it's part of patience. Patience really is about controlling your emotional responses to certain situations and accepting that sometimes things may not meet your expectations, right? Managing expectations is important too, as you may expect certain reactions or events or outcomes. And when they don't occur, they can cause an emotional response. And so for me, that was why me and pouting and all that kind of stuff. And, I'm sure I was a delight to be around those as I was sulking about. And, impatience really is about not surrendering to a situation that you can't fight. Like I can't fight against the weather. I can't fight against these injuries. So why get impatient about it? There's nothing I can do about that. Whether it's getting stuck in traffic or waiting someone who's late to a meeting or being sidelined by someone else's mistakes or whatnot. It's learning to shift. And I'm going to give some tips soon on how to kind of help reframe things and see things in different lights so that you can step more into patience and acceptance. And part of this whole deal was, and this is for anyone who's watching or listening who may be in a situation right now, who are feeling ill-tempered around it, or feeling all kind of raged up or just swallowing it. Like it's there's something about accepting and tolerating the situation without getting angry or upset. And it's funny, I just used the word tolerating. And to me, there is a difference between acceptance and tolerance. Now, tolerance is about, to me, tolerance is like the lower form of that scale. If there's acceptance is up here. I would say tolerance is further down the line. For some people, stepping into tolerance is a stepping stone into acceptance, and that's okay. But tolerance to me is about enduring. When I think of that word, it's enduring. It's like putting up with something unwanted or harmful or not warranted. It's like surface level. Whereas acceptance moves past that and promotes a climate or an environment of equity, of mutual respect and appreciation. Acceptance to me goes deeper and erases the differences where being tolerant, you still hold a certain belief, like you don't budge. Like if you're a racist, you can still hold bigoted views and just tolerate those people around you who don't look or sound like you, but you would still prefer that they not be there. I mean, you're probably like one misstep or one bad moment from losing your cool or saying something inappropriate. Whereas acceptance would look like releasing judgment and seeing things with less bias and more equality. Someone who may have had bigoted views, when they get into acceptance, they see that, hey, this person's not really much different than, in fact, we're very similar. And all that other stuff erases. So less judgment, more opportunity, more openness, and more clarity, and more happiness, and more joy, more contentedness. So you can see that there's a bit of a difference between tolerating something and accepting something. In my case, with the Daves, I had to see that I had a choice. Again, I had a choice in my response. I could continue to stew in my own juices, or I could just go with the flow. And doing so, like in stepping into acceptance, it helps to separate the feeling of anger from the behavior of anger. We can choose our behaviors, but we can't choose our feelings. Like feelings just happen, right? Like I always say, like you're not responsible for the first thought in your head, but you're responsible for the ones that follow. And so when we feel something, annoyance, upset, whatever it is, we have the choice of being that feeling or taking action to change it. We can step into that feeling and exacerbate it and amplify it, or we can move away from it, take an action that steps away from it and changing it. And the secret really is it's in our thoughts, right? Like what we choose to think in response to a feeling can intensify, like I said, or calm the feeling. What we think in response to a feeling will allow us to choose our response or behavior to that feeling. So yeah, I can be annoyed and I can step into the action of further annoyance, right? Like I can chirp about it, I can slam pots and pans down, I can whatever. Or I can say, you know what? It's going to take them 3 weeks to heal. What I can do is, you know what? I'm going to really make this gratin better than I've had it. I've made it before. Or let me help, the pasta station. I'm good. Let me help them out, like being of service maybe. So switching that energy into something that is more productive for yourself and for anyone around you. And as I think about this, with the Daves, as they healed their own hands, learning to kind of clench and unclench, I had to do the same, but with my thoughts and my judgments, right? Like there's a difference between having a closed mind and an open mind. And I had to learn how to accept in a very loving kind of way. And it wasn't easy, you know. And when they did return and I finally got to the place where I needed to be in terms of where in the kitchen, I was exactly where I needed to be. And I was exactly at the time I needed to be there. And I know it sounds all cheeseball, and I get it, but it was freeing. I had to learn this lesson over and over again. Now, am I still there 100% in full acceptance and full understanding of like this is where I need to be? No, I'm a human and I get impatient with the small things. A laptop that takes too long to load up, or my kids taking too long to get ready, or whatever. Uh, I'm still human. I get like that. But when it comes to the bigger things, I'm much better at that. And understanding that no matter where you are, we have an idea in our head of where we need to be. But if you believe in a higher power, if you believe in the universe taking the wheel, so to speak, they can see things that we don't. It can hear conversations we're not privy to. It knows again, if you believe in this, there is a greater plan. It doesn't mean that there's no free will. Of course, you can do whatever you want, and that can change the trajectory of this plan. It can shift it. But overall, if you're going towards a goal, we have a very linear way of seeing things. But often it's these paths, these thorny brushes, these little wanderings, these rabbit holes that may be painful at the time, but when we get there, we go, "Oh, I get it now. That's why I had to go through that." And so much of that comes down to patience and acceptance. It's how we all learn and grow. And like I said, I'm going to share a few tips on how to build that up, because I had to learn a lot of this through trial and error. And so I'm hoping that I can share these things so you don't have to step into so much trial and error. You don't have to, get burned like I do, or the Daves. Okay, hold tight. Okay, so acceptance. How do you do it, right? Like, I make it sound like once you do this, you'll be on a mountaintop in a robe, and all these animals are going to land on you and be at your feet, and you'll be in blissful nirvana. And it doesn't quite work that way. Although at times, when you do step into acceptance, it can feel like that. It can feel like the weight of the weight of the world is off your shoulders. And of all the things that I've learned, acceptance, and I kid you not, acceptance has been the most game changing for me. Like when I go to bed at night, my head hits the pillow, I feel free of so much because I have accepted and let go of a lot. And by the way, acceptance, I just want to say this quickly. Acceptance doesn't mean that you condone or just allow willy-nilly to let anyone walk over you or that's not acceptance. Acceptance is understanding it, and we'll go through some of the things that I do to help with the acceptance. But it's like forgiveness. You don't have to condone it, but you do it for yourself. You accept it. I can accept a certain situation, but there still might be consequences, right? I can forgive someone for murdering a friend, but they still need to be put in jail. And so acceptance isn't just blindful or willful, uh, just being a welcome mat and allowing anything and everything to happen to you. But what it does is it shifts the perspective. Okay, so this is what I do. Here's some steps that I do. This can take seconds if you've practiced this, or this can take some time if you're new to this. So first and foremost, one, I acknowledge the situation. Whatever shitty situation you may feel like you're in, acknowledge it. Be objective. Like, this is happening, XYZ. Okay, cool. We acknowledge it. I'm not trying to paint it a certain way. This is it. Second, deep breath. Maybe 2, maybe 3. From your belly, not up here shallow, like your dog on the deck in summer. Breathe deep from your belly, in through the nose, out through the mouth. And what that does is it creates a gap. It creates a space between the catalyst and the response. So now your body is now connected into this way of doing things, this process. 3, be willing to let go of judgment. So if it's a judgment towards a person, even if that person is yourself, or judgment toward a situation or institution or whatever it is, allow yourself, be willing, and if you're not there yet, be willing to be willing, if you will, to let go of judgment. That's a step in itself. What would it feel like to let go of the judgment that you're holding towards someone or something? 4, act as if you've let go of that judgment or accepted that. Right? Whatever view you're holding right now that can be poisoning you, what's the opposite view? Can you hold the opposite view and act as if? Feel like, what would that feel in your body to act as if you are letting go of all this? 5th is knowing what you can control and what you cannot control. It's kind of like the serenity prayer, right? God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference, right? So focus on the things you can control. And then many times that may just be your response. And this is what we're talking about. Many times that's all we can do. So instead of focusing on the other stuff, the noise, go inward and like, what can I change here? What can I control here? 6, don't act out, right? Because we love righteous anger. We love it. Oh, it's so tasty and drizzled over pancakes. Oh, it's so thick and rich. But don't act out. Again, the breath really helps. It gives you that space between wanting to launch into somebody and then saying something that you'll regret or doing something that you'll regret. It's just think about it for a moment. Think, don't act out. And then finally, 7, keep bringing yourself to the present. Because our minds are going to want to go forecast into the future or dip back into the past and like, this always happens to me and all blah, 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 blah. No. Stay present. Again, going back to step 1, acknowledge, breathe. And so if you have to kind of rotate through this until you get to a place where you're like, you know what? This is, this person hit my car. They rear-ended me. I had to go pick up my kids. I can't control what the driver did. I'm not going to retaliate and smash their car or hit them or whatever. I'm not going to focus on judging them. What a trash driver there. This was an accident. What can I do to control this? What can I do? Okay, I can get my insurance. I can make a phone call to my whatever it is, and just accept it. You may not like it still, but you can accept it. So if that makes sense. And so for me, I can do that fairly quickly. Sometimes I get stuck depending on what kind of mood I'm in or what kind of incident. But for the most part, I've been able to cycle through that. And you can too, the more you practice this. Sometimes you have to repeat it. You got to put it on repeat like a Spotify list or something, right? Now, patience. Okay, so we've talked about acceptance. Let's just quickly go patience, and we'll go through a few steps as well. And then I'll let you go. Then you can listen to your ASMR. Someone who has nails. I don't have nails. I bite my nail. You can do the thing on the microphone, clickety clickety. I can't do that. All right. Maybe you can use ASMR to help with acceptance. I'm sure if you YouTube ASMR acceptance, I'm sure it's there. All right. Patience. Okay, so the first step, again, this is about reframing. This is about thinking things a bit differently, right? What's really going on here? Um, so again, let's say someone's late and they're running 10 minutes late. Instead of sitting there stewing, you say, okay, I've got 10 minutes. Maybe I can catch up on a few emails, or maybe I can go grab a coffee. Like, just reframe it in a way that takes that edge off. Two, slow down. Okay. So when we are like, I can be very impatient. I want this, I want this, I want this, and I want it now, now, now. I have to slow down sometimes. I have to slow it down because I can get ahead of myself and I can miss the things that are right in front of me. And so we're so eager to get to where we want to go. And this can be like a goal. I don't mean like physically, you have to get to the car wash or something, but we sometimes forget what's around us. So take in what's in the present and slow it down a bit. Third, see other perspectives. Again, let's say we go back to the someone hitting your car. Maybe something's going on with them. Maybe they were not feeling well. Maybe they were in a rush. Maybe they've got a loved one that's at the hospital. I've used this one the most when I'm at the grocery store and I'm behind. Like, my superpower is finding the slowest lane at the grocery store. That's my superpower. I own it. I call it. And so, and when I see someone, let's say someone older or whatever, and they're really talking up the cashier a lot, maybe I think, instead of going, come on, granny, hurry up, I'll think, maybe this is the only social interaction she's got today. Maybe this is the only time she gets to socialize. So you know what? I'm going to let her do that. I'm in no rush. I have no rush. And so if you can switch the perspective, it makes a huge difference. That's probably one of the most important points in all of this. For practice acceptance, we just talked about that. So get into the acceptance part. So again, when I see the old lady or the old person at the thing, I accept, like, this is the line I'm in. I chose this. I'm being taught patience, just what I always say to myself, but just practice acceptance. 5, let it be broken. So what I mean by that is, a lot of times things aren't going to be the way they quote unquote should be, but that's okay. Sometimes I will let things be without having to fix it immediately. And that kind of goes back to the point of slow down. So instead of having to fix something immediately, right away, it depends. If you work at a nuclear reactor, you may want to fix that pretty quickly. But there's some things that I just hold back. I pull it back and say, you know what, I'll get to that. Maybe there's something else I want to focus on. And it's okay that that's broken or not working. So that's another way of practicing patience. It's like pushing yourself to not have to fix things right away. 6 is building tolerance. And this is piggybacking off of what I just said. It's like holding off on that instant gratification. So for an example is, resist the urge to check where your Amazon package is 25 times a day. Maybe just hold off. I don't even look at that. Maybe if I was expecting it a certain day, I may check. If not, patience. Especially Amazon's crazy, right? What did we do before Amazon? I don't know. You had to wait a week or two before something came in the mail. Now we expected the next day, that day. And this, like, that's where I have to really step back. It's like, if I had to order this back when I was younger, like, this would have been 2 weeks and I would have had no problem waiting. But we're so used to, anyway, Amazon, it's great, but they don't treat their people well. Anyway, that's another thing. Okay, lastly, 7th is the last point, gratitude. You see this on every list for every self-development, personal development, gratitude. It's because it does shift your polarity. It shifts the way you see things. When you start the day with gratitude or end the day with gratitude, you are positioning your mind to see things through the lens of opportunity rather than of scarcity. And so I had to do this today. I was starting to feel a certain way of thinking. I'm like, you know what? I get to do this. I get to do that. I get to take my dogs out for a walk in the middle of the day. I get to do a podcast like this. I get to spend the time doing this. I wouldn't be able to do this if I was working on the line somewhere. I get to do this as an entrepreneur. I get to go meet my teachers, meet my kids' teachers, on a weeknight and blah, blah, blah. So I think gratitude is magical. And so that is part of the patience process. And like anything else in any of these processes, even if you're 1% better than the day before or the week before, then you're on the right path, right? Like, this is something that is an ongoing process. I know I'm going to be practicing these until it's time for my dirt nap. And so this is not something that we perfect. It's just something that we practice, like yoga. You you practice yoga because you're in a consistent way of you're consistently uh, integrating this into your life. And as I think about this now, and this is the perspective shift I just had talking about this in the moment, I realize that, speaking of gratitude, I realized that those Daves had to practice this too, right? Like there I was thinking, poor me. Oh, I gotta stay here and all that. These two guys were at home hurting big time. Plus, they were not making any money, right? Plus, they were probably feeling like, oh my God, I can't believe my first day and this happened. Probably felt embarrassed. Probably felt like, oh, I'm such an idiot or clumsy or whatever it is. They were probably going through a lot. And I mean, I was fortunate to be still healthy and making money, um, and improving my skill sets, and I was on my way to getting promoted. Like I had so much going for me, but at the beginning I chose to be grumpy when really everything was going great. I just had to slow down. I had to release judgment. All these things I talked about. Once I started doing that, it was great. The time flew by. And before I know it, the Daves were back. you know, um, the burn part too. It just reminds me of a time when a cook called in because never mind. That's a whole nother story. That's another episode. We'll get into that one, I promise. Anyway, we will leave it there, my friends. I wonder how those Daves are. I don't know. There was no Facebook or anything back then. All right, I'm going to go back to maybe practicing my ASMR. I got my bag of brioche bread here. Actually, I'm going to probably eat some of this. Getting hungry talking about this. All right. Please comment, like, share, and hit the bell for notifications so that you can get the podcast hot off the grill and into your earlobes, into your ear holes. Any help to get the word out for this podcast would be so appreciated. Listen, I'll even bake you some hot cross buns. How's that? Or maybe when we get to 1,000 subs, I'll cook something for you guys right here. Maybe. But there you go. There's a goal for all of us. So until then, kitchen's closed. Now scrub.